All right, does the screen change for you? Can you see the PPT for ethics, integrity, and aptitude? All right. How many of you have gone through the question paper already? And what is your sense of the paper? On a difficulty level, from 1 to 5, 1 being super easy and 5 being extremely difficult, how will you rate this paper? Three. Everything was discussed in the classroom itself. Yes, absolutely. Abhishek, you found it on a little difficult side. You're rating it as 4. Akansha, you found it very easy. You're rating it as 2. Why did you find it so easy? Did you do the questions already? Did you find the question very familiar? Why do you think the paper was easy? Paper was on the usual line. Yes, exactly. Case studies were easy. Case studies were repeat case studies of previous question paper. How many of you know this fact already? I'm going to show you, but how many of you already know that there are 2 cases in the paper were repeated? There's a question in paper part A that was also repeated. There's a thing about ethics. The thing is that it is a static. And the thing about static thing is that there's not too much of a scope of asking new things. So the question keep revolving around same kind of theme every year. The core ethical things remains the same, but the peripheral information keeps on changing. But the core ethical scenario in case studies and the core ethical theme of questions asked in section A remains the same. And questions have to revolve around that. There's one thing that since this paper was introduced in 2013 and this was the 9th paper. So when this happens, when you keep asking the same thing, question will not be very direct. Some of the questions in part A were very good. It required good aptitude to write the answer. It was very, very applied in nature. They have connected 2-3 topics together and have asked a single question on that. Generally, questions were very direct in section A. But this time, few questions needed high application of mind and integration of thought and integration of your content. So barring 2-3 questions, largely the questions were on very predictable line and it was very easy. So let's start discussing all the questions one by one. Since I have to run you through entire question paper, so I'll be a little fast. You have to be very attentive and you have to be very alert. This is the first question of the paper. Identify 5 ethical traits on which one can plot the performance of a civil servant, justify their inclusion in the matrix. So you have to identify 5 of them and you have to give justification as to why we are choosing them. So 1, you have to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It not necessarily has to have the order of precedence. You do not have to think as to which is the most important and which among the 5 is least important. You just have to spell out 5. Identify 5 ethical traits on which one can plot the performance of a civil servant. And you have to write a line on each as to what is the importance of these 5 ethical traits as to why you are including them in the list. Now, one thing you have to pay attention to, you have to plot the performance. So you have to do performance evaluation of civil servants. Concerning ethical traits, you have to know that this is something that is very common thing in the exam. Civil service values, civil service traits is part of your syllabus. It has been very, very prominently mentioned in the syllabus, aptitude and foundational values. Aptitude and foundational values. Similarly, it also has been mentioned public or civil service values in ethics and ethics in public administration. So you have to do ethical traits or ethical values very prominently, and UPSC has asked this umpteen number of times. For example, see the question of 2018. In 2018, UPSC has asked a question: state 3 basic values universal in nature in the context of civil services and bring out their importance. See, values which are universal in nature, they must be used for performance evaluation because it is expected to be followed by everyone. So this question is about values that will help you plot the performance of a civil servant. So you must choose the universal values which are universal in nature. This was asked in 2018. Values which are universal in nature, they must be adopted, inculcated, and practiced by civil servants. But they asked about 3. Here they're asking about 5. But it's not a big deal. UPSC has been asking about important foundational values since the time the paper began, right from 2013. In 2013, they asked about multiple values like integrity, perseverance, spirit of service, commitment, courage of conviction, personal opinion. They asked 6. And then in many other questions, in many other forms, they have asked about various values. There are standard set of values given by second ARC, the set of values that you study in the Nolan committee report, the 7 values. There have been values mentioned in the syllabus itself. Aptitude and foundational values for civil services. It begins with integrity. Then you have impartiality and non-partisanship, objectivity, dedication to public service, empathy, tolerance, and compassion towards weaker sections. In your syllabus itself, mention many values. So you have to take 5 of them and write the importance of that. So it's an easy breezy thing that you won't have any problem in. You can begin with integrity. You can talk about impartiality and non-partisanship as to what is their importance. Integrity is a safeguard against act of corruption. For a public service, integrity is quintessential. It is the biggest safeguard against all the unethical, all the act and the drives for doing the act of corruption. Impartiality and non-partisanship is extremely important in a plural society like India. Mostly in developing countries where the feeling of sense of relative deprivation can increase. It is extremely important because the most basic requirement of society is justice. The first value mentioned in the preamble of Indian Constitution is justice. Justice is fundamental for stability of any society. Aristotle has said that it is in justice that the ordering of society is centered. So just mention the importance of those values and why you will include them. Then you can mention some of the values not mentioned in the syllabus directly, but UPSC has asked many a times about them. And you'll find the reference to those in this question paper as well. For example, creativity and innovation. For example, in developing countries, resources are always scarce. Always scarce. And in that case, innovation is required by a public servant to overcome the barrier of resource limitation. For example, you must have heard about People's Road. Armstrong Pami. He was a DM in Manipur and he made People's Road through people's contribution coming from people. Before monsoon, it was required infrastructure, but there was no budget with government. But he still went ahead and get the job done using the resources available in the society, although the financing was not available from the government side. So how creative, how innovative in resolving the public ethical dilemma in public sector and implementing the schemes and flagship programs. How much of innovation is there in the public servant that can also be a criteria for performance evaluation. Right. So I'm just giving you the clues as to where the question has come from, hasn't been asked in the past, and could you have answered it just by a little bit of practice and awareness of syllabus and previous year's question paper. The detailing and the exact answer in word limit with proper structure and presentation will be followed up gradually, as must have been told to you already. Right? This was the first question. The second question was identify 10 essential values that are needed to be an effective public servant. So values which are needed to be effective public servant should also be the values that you will use to evaluate the performance, isn't it? So a kind of little bit of overlap. So kind of overlap in the first question and the second question. But here you have been asked to give 10. Identify 10 essential values that are needed to be an effective public servant. Now, values they have asked previously, and there are many values mentioned in the syllabus as well. The second ARC also gives the list of foundational values for civil servants. So listing down 10 values will not be difficult for you if you have covered the syllabus extensively. It will not be difficult at all. The second part of the question is, describe the ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior in public servant. See, this thing will come again in the paper. The theme is the same, and I'll highlight this again, that the duties and responsibilities of public servant is much higher than otherwise services provided by private sector, for the reasons that we'll discuss later in the discussion. But it is essential they act ethically. It is very essential that they act ethically. So the question is, describe the ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior in the public servant. The answer to this question, UPSC has given already, and I'll show you how, and that should be the most appropriate answer to the second part of the question. Ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior. Behavior, as you understand, comes from attitude. Attitude comes from value system. Value system is developed through emotion and your belief system, your cognition. So the drivers of behavior are internal and they are external as well. Attitude is the internal driver, but the controller could also be institutional. For example, if the laws are very strict, then you will not have high propensity to do unethical behavior, right? So if the ecosystem in society is very ethical, the whole miasma is very ethical, there are people around and who thinks that doing the act of corruption is very, very wrong. In that kind of social ethical environment, you will have less propensity to do act of corruption. So it depends upon the external factors as well and internal factors as well. The internal factor is attitude. When they say describe the ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior in the public servant, then ways and means will include controlling the internal factors and controlling the external factors both. Now see how UPSC has asked this. In 2016, UPSC has asked about, they have given a context that there are certain things, undesirable behavior picked by citizens of India. How can such undesirable attitudes be changed and socio-ethical values be cultivated in the aspiring and serving civil servants? So how undesirable attitude be changed in serving civil servants? For civil servants, how do you change attitude? How will you do proper attitude formation? This is the question. Okay. And here they're asking ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior. That means how will you do internally proper attitude formation? That is one part of the answer. For the other part of the answer, for external behavior, you should look at this question. This question was asked previously in the mains exam. I'll just read out the question for you. Listen very carefully. In recent times, there has been an increasing concern in India to develop effective civil service ethics, code of conduct, transparency measures, ethics and integrity system, and anti-corruption agencies. In view of this, there's a need being felt to focus on 3 specific areas. Okay, which are those areas? 3 specific areas for what? For internalizing integrity and ethics in civil servants. If you internalize ethics and integrity in civil servants, then that will be the best ways and means to prevent non-ethical behavior, right? So those ways and means are anticipating specific threats to ethical standards and integrity. This is given in the question itself. There are 3 ways and means in order to internalize integrity and ethics in civil services. One is to anticipate specific threats to ethical standards and integrity. For example, whatever the process the civil servant is involved in, there could be specific threat in that process. You need to recognize that beforehand. For example, if a civil servant is involved in giving government tender, then there could be a high risk of corruption from people who are seeking tender. So what do? You get into transparency pact. you get into integrity pact. So you have these measures ready. Anticipation of the risk has to be done prior. If the person is involved in disbursing and implementing some government scheme, disbursing fund for a drought, then there's a high risk that that money could be embezzled. Then you need to have things in check, for example, social audit. Okay. Then the second thing is strengthening the ethical competence of a civil servant through ethical training. The third parameter given by UPSC is developing administrative process and practices which promote ethical values. For example, improving work culture in public sector. So those practices and processes that will improve ethical values. So these are the three things that must be done externally to prevent non-ethical behavior. So anticipating specific threats will also include having legislating strict laws. So these are the three subheadings that can be used as external factors to control behavior and attitude as the internal factor. Both UPSC has asked and both you have as an answer ready to answer this question. I'll tell you, there are not many things that can be asked. Only the form and the manner and the way in which it is asked will change. You cannot be surprised in ethics paper if you prepare it properly, because there are not umpteen number of themes that can be asked. The basic foundational ethical dilemmas and ethical questions in life are very few. The problems are many. There are many problems like climate change, gender issue, there are problems of rights, there are problem of refugees. There could be many, many problems, but fundamentally the root cause remains the same. Fundamentally, the core ethical dilemma, the core ethical scenario remains the same. Someone is not fulfilling the duty. There are institutional weaknesses. The process, the integrity of process is getting violated. These will be the things around which all the problems will build on. So fundamental things don't change, then the scope of asking questions also does not vary so much. And the essential values have been covered. This is basic things that everyone covered and we also covered in our class. Look at question number 2. Question number 2 is the impact of digital technology as a reliable source of input for rational decision making is debatable. Critically evaluate with suitable examples. Now, there are many contexts for this. You must have heard that civil servants have been whipped that they do not use social media. And there were controversy in Puducherry and other states and UTs regarding this. So use of social media and use of technology as a reliable source of input, reliable source of information is one thing that has been making round in the news. Apart from that, there is another context for discussion that technology and its ethical implication is a very important aspect of your syllabus. You have to do the implication of technology in the realm of ethics. For example, implication of AI, right? So that has to be done. The third aspect from which discussion becomes important, rationality, rational decision making. Informed decision making is an important aspect of bureaucracy for civil services. And from there comes the value of objectivity. Objectivity means having an informed decision making ability. Okay. Objectivity has been mentioned in your syllabus. So you need to have objectivity, and unless you have correct information, you'll not be in a position to have informed decision making. So you cannot apply this value of objectivity unless you have unless you're armed up with right information. So this thing was also building up in the context of fake news and in the context of misinformation getting spreaded and people getting misguided because of that. So it had to be asked. It was not a surprise. Impact of digital technology as reliable source of input for rational decision making is debatable. We also have discussed this case previously in our test series that information is crucial for growth and development. But there are problems with information. Correct information does not reach us to people. And then the question in the case was identify the potential damaging effect of rise of misinformation. The debate regarding reliable source of input, meaning there could be misinformation. So what is the potential damaging effect of rise of misinformation and the poor potential of common man to identify them? So this was something that was already predicted, had to be asked, the implication of misinformation through social medias or through other means of communication or through technology in general? And what is the impact of that in rational decision making? So, could have been handled, and there's a context for discussion from current affair and from the syllabus. The detailed answer of this, of course, we'll discuss the nuances as to what you have to write in introduction, body, and conclusion, how you have to structure it as a follow-up to this discussion. Quickly, Abhi, we are speeding up through the questions. We are understanding the demand of the question as to how you should have discussed. You could have you can answer it, and the significance as to using syllabus and previous year's question, using our classes and test series, how you could have answered it. See, the second part of question number 2. Beside domain knowledge, a public official needs innovativeness and creativity of high order. It's a very important thing. It is required as a high order as well, while resolving ethical dilemmas as well. You need to have innovativeness and creativity as well, but you need to have other things. That's why as well. There are certain things which are required to resolve ethical dilemma. You need to have first do ethical analysis. Ethical dilemma is a situation in which you have to choose between two rights. It's not a right and wrong. Otherwise, there is no dilemma. So you have to choose from two things which are not evidently outrightly incorrect. So looking from different vantage point, different perspective, it has weightage. Both have its merits, demerits. So in that scenario, what will you choose when there is no clear option ethically? That is ethical dilemma. When you have ethical dilemma, you have to do ethical analysis. After doing ethical analysis, you have to use principles of ethics to resolve the dilemma. When you do the analysis, you identify merits and demerits. You know, in case studies, why you have been asked to write merits and demerits? That is actually the ethical analysis of the situation. Knowing the merits and demerits, you can see the weightage of different merits of different options. So weighing them and using the principles of ethics, moral philosophies, you can resolve the dilemma. You can see what is more suitable in our present context. And depending upon which ethical principle you use, you can reach to different results. If you use the principle of antodaya, unto the last, if you have to focus on them, you might end in different decision. If you look at the principle of common good or utilitarian principle, maximum amount of good for maximum number of people, then you can reach to the different result. So once you have done the analysis, you know the pros and cons of different options, then it also depends upon which ethical principle you are using to resolve the ethical dilemma. So in the process of resolving ethical dilemma, these are the steps. This is a standard question. And in 2018, UPSC has asked a question, explain the process of resolving ethical dilemmas in public administration. And there's a standard process for it. Resolving ethical dilemma is a standard thing that you study in syllabus. The same thing has been asked here, resolving ethical dilemmas, right? But as I have told you in the beginning, when a paper syllabus does not change for a long time, then the question does not stop to be coming directly because the direct questions have been asked previously. From very important topics, direct questions coming already in the exam previously, then you must prepare for a higher order question on those topics because they being important topics will always be asked. And simple question, direct question has been asked, so you must prepare for a higher order thinking questions on those topics. And now they are saying that for resolving ethical dilemma, you need innovation and creativeness as well. So whatever generally you know that is required, but you know you need innovation and creativity as well. Okay, this you have to discuss. So you will mention that there are certain things you have to do ethical analysis, you have to use ethical principles, but over and above, you also need to have civil servants, you also need to have innovation and creativity of high order. The reason being that everything is not in the rule book. So regarding civil services, there will be certain guidelines in the form of civil service code of conduct. There will be certain guidelines in the form of constitutional morality, constitutional principles. There will be certain guidelines through legislations. There will be certain guidelines through policies. And there could also be guidelines based upon past precedents. But using all of them, still, you will not be in a clear position to make decisions. For example, UPSC has asked this many times. Multiple times in different questions, UPSC has asked, what innovative measures will you use? What innovative measures will you use? What innovative measures will you use? That is actually using innovation to resolve ethical dilemma. And this time around, they have used, instead of asking in case study, they've asked in part A. They've asked multiple times previously in cases if you are in charge for implementing socially, publicly important scheme of government, and an old lady walks up, but she doesn't have the requisite document to take the benefit of the scheme. What will you do? Now, you being a public officer, you being a man of integrity and objectivity, you cannot violate law. So, a woman not having documents cannot become beneficiary of any scheme because that will be violation of law. So, you have ethical dilemma. Following the law, objectivity on one side, integrity, official command, work culture, rule book, all on one side. On the other side, you have empathy, you have compassion, you have social responsibility, you have moral responsibility. You could be having crisis of conscience if you don't help the old lady. But this is a dilemma. Here you have to use creativity and innovation as to what will you do when there's a crisis of fund. How can you collect fund publicly in a manner that auditing of that fund is done, integrity of process is maintained, and what else? What can you do to help the woman? Because not helping is not an option, and violating the law is also not an option. And civil servants get stuck in this kind of dilemma very commonly. So there need to be innovation and creativity. Maybe you can do something without violating the law, and there comes the opportunity for showing the innovation, the requirement rather. So it's a common theme. If you have gone through previous year's question paper, the case studies are made on this theme. And this time around, they have asked this in part A. Okay. See, question number 3. This is code-based question. UPSC has asked previously, quotation of Swami Vivekananda many times. The quotation is, every work has got to pass through hundreds of difficulties before succeeding. Every work has got to pass through hundreds of difficulties before succeeding. Now, this is at its core the idea of perseverance. Previously, I have shown you that UPSC has asked question regarding civil service values, essential values, and there they have given perseverance. Perseverance has been asked in various forms multiple times in the question paper. It's an essential value. Could be considered as foundational value. Perseverance, fortitude, dedication. You cannot have dedication, commitment without perseverance and fortitude. So it is required. And the quotation of Swami Vivekananda is on these lines. So if you know the importance as to how perseverance is important for civil services, then you can answer this in the context of civil services or in general context as well. If you know the example for perseverance, you can write example for this quotation. Will that be a problem? No. If you prepare certain things in ethics paper, no matter in what form the question is asked, that won't be a surprise for you. Remember, quotations are general in nature, but as I have always told you, your answer will not be general. Your answer will be specific to the paper. And that we will learn more gradually as to how a specific answer to the paper can be written for this question. But this is a very general question. General quotation can be easily handled. There was another quotation of Dalai Lama. We can never obtain peace in the outer world until and unless we obtain peace within ourselves. This can be seen as a question. When we do not have peace within, when do you don't have peace? We do not have peace within ourselves. When we have this feeling of guilt, when we have this feeling of incompleteness, then we do not have internal peace. When we have low emotional intelligence, we cannot manage our emotions, negative emotions, maybe fear, maybe anger, maybe sorrow. If we are not able to manage our emotion, then we will not be at peace internally. If we have negative emotion of greed running through us, and still we are not able to achieve certain thing, then we will not be at peace internally. So you have to link whatever is there in the quotation through the topics mentioned in the paper. You do not have to write just in plain English. That won't fetch marks. The quotation is very general, but the answer will not be general. The answer must touch upon the theories, the core things of the paper. So this quotation can be linked with emotional intelligence in a prescriptive manner as to what will you do to come to terms with yourself, to develop internal peace within you. And it can also be linked with crisis of conscience. Because when you have crisis of conscience, you do not have internal peace. We can never obtain peace in the outer world unless we obtain peace within ourselves. Peace within ourselves meaning managing our emotion. For example, managing greed. If we manage the negative emotion of greed, then we could be helpful to others. We could be honest. We can do our job ethically with commitment, dedication. If I have certain money given to me to be spent for government initiatives, government programs to be implemented for poor, I won't try to embezzle money from there because I am at peace within. I have managed my negative emotions of greed. I will also work with high dedication, commitment without fear, without getting intimidated by other powerful people, because I can manage my negative emotion of fear. Right? So that's how you have to write in the context of civil services and in general context, but bringing terms, terminologies, and the theories of the paper. If you look at the third part of question number 3, it's a very good, beautiful quotation of Erik Erikson, although it's less known, but UPSC has used it because it is so suitable, so suitable. It is actually the major learning that you have from the ethics paper. This is what you have to learn. Ultimately, this is what you have to learn in life so that ordering comes in society. Life doesn't make sense. Life doesn't make any sense without interdependence. People want to be self-dependent, right? The tendency is to become self-dependent. But the quotation is saying life doesn't make any sense without interdependence. We need each other, and the sooner we learn that, it is better for all of us. Life doesn't make sense. Things doesn't make sense if it doesn't fulfill its purpose. If you buy extremely expensive vehicle, but it has very extremely poor mileage, and it is also not very smooth in driving, then it doesn't make sense to buy it, because the purpose of buying a vehicle is not fulfilled. Life won't make any sense if it is not fulfilling the purpose. The purpose of life, the highest purpose of life, a man, is self-actualization. And if you're not getting self-actualized, then your life doesn't make sense. And for self-actualization, you need certain things. You need to overcome your negative emotions. You need to have the spirit of charity. You need to develop that emotion of empathy and compassion. You need to be helpful to others. The service to man is service to God. You need to have the spirit of Sarva Dharma Sambhav. This is interdependence, mutual coexistence. Why? Because it is required. You need to fulfill your duty. When you are interdependent, you fulfill your duty, then only the rights of others get fulfilled. Gandhiji has said that if everyone focuses on duties, then rights of everyone will be ensured. And if you have to transcend into the higher level of spirituality, then you have to go through helping other people. When you help someone, you feel good. Your dignity is boosted. Your self-respect increases. So helping others is not just for others, although it does work out for others, but it is also helping yourself. You are helping yourself because that is the way through which you develop as a moral creature. Without helping others, without benefiting others, you cannot help yourself in rising up to the level of higher level of ethical morals standard of humanity. That's the way you grow. So without interdependence, your growth will also be dwarfed. You will be selfish creature. So life will not make any sense without interdependence. That's what it means. All right. And we have covered it. We have covered most of the things, but just to show you one thing that comes very close is this quotation of Plato. The idea, the model that Plato put forward for society was that we must live like different cells of an organism, where health of one affects the health of others. This is interdependence, the highest form of interdependence as parts and the cells and tissues and organs of body. The health of one affects the health of others. This is mutually coherent existence, interdependence. Emily Dickinson, she's a very famous poet, American poet. Those who have not found the heaven below will fail of it above. So your life will not make any sense. You cannot achieve heaven above if you haven't achieved heaven below. Achieved heaven below meaning living together in peace. If you have not done that, then there is nothing afterwards as well. So your life has not made any sense. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Finding yourself meaning self-actualization. You're growing as a human being, as an ethical, moral creature, as a rational creature. And what is the best way to grow? The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. That's what it means. And that is what the purpose of studying all these ethics is, that we need to be interdependent. If you are good with them, you're also good with yourself. If you're helping them progress, you're also helping yourself progress. That's the essence of life. So it is extremely important quotation, which is not just important for the exam. We must adopt this in our life as well. So this tendency of individualism, कि मैं अकेले रह लूंगा, अकेले कमा लूंगा, अकेले जी लूंगा, this is not a nice thing. This is not good for our society. Question number 4. Attitude is an important component that goes as input in the development of human being. How to build a suitable attitude needed for public servant? This is a repeat question that UPSC has asked many times. Now pay attention. Pay attention to the question. Question can be repeated, but the exact nature of the question will not be the same. The nuances in the question will change. The undercurrent will change, and you have to catch on them. For example, here it says how to build a suitable attitude. How to build a suitable attitude needed for a public servant. So there are two parts. What is suitable attitude for public servant and how to build them? Suitable attitude has been discussed upon by UPSC many times. In 2015, UPSC has discussed about bureaucratic attitude and democratic attitude. Was asked to differentiate between them. You understand that the suitable attitude, as understand in the current theory of bureaucracy of public administration for civil servants, is democratic attitude, not bureaucratic attitude. So when they ask about suitable attitude, you have to little bit comment on it, that what is a suitable attitude. Similarly, in 2016, UPSC has asked a question that in the context of the work of Max Weber, who has given many theories for bureaucracy, they say that state bureaucracy might possess its own independent bureaucratic morality. And from morality is linked attitude. If the state can possess its independent bureaucratic morality or its attitude, and they asked to critically analyze this statement. So what is that independent or what is that different attitude that public servant or bureaucrat, civil servants must be possessing? You have an idea from these two questions. And there are certain specific requirements because their responsibility is more because they are part of social contract. So what is that suitable attitude? You have to comment on that, 1, 2, 3, like this. Then you need to go upon, that will become your introduction. Then you need to go upon as to how to do the attitude formation for these suitable attitudes. Now, attitude formation of civil servants, as we already have seen this in discussion of 2016, has been asked already. How can such undesirable attitudes be changed and socio-ethical values be cultivated in aspiring and serving civil servants? So how to change undesirable attitude, or how to bring about desirable attitude, or how to do attitude formation in civil servants has been asked. So there are ways and means to develop proper attitude in public servants. And the process of attitude formation is very, very basic for your syllabus because attitude has been separately mentioned in the syllabus. So how to change attitude, how to form attitude, that is a thing that becomes very basic. You need a break. I don't think a break has been planned. You can just take a quick break of 2 minutes yourself and then come back and catch up. 2 minutes won't hurt, I guess. So I'm telling you that attitude formation is a basic thing. It's a core part of your theory and it's an easy thing. It's an easy thing that you can cover and do. Right. So we will quickly run through the questions, and I think it's better to do it in continuity. See, the second part of the question is in case of crisis of conscience, there are 3 things in this question. See, crisis of conscience. Does emotional intelligence help to overcome the same? In case of crisis of conscience, does emotional intelligence help to overcome the same? Does emotional intelligence help to overcome crisis of conscience? Right? But this is not all. Does it help without compromising the ethical or moral standard that you are likely to follow? So there shouldn't be a compromise in your moral standard. There are three things, and this is a question of triangular nature. In 2013 and in various other years beyond that, UPSC has asked question on emotional intelligence. It's a core topic of your syllabus, and questions are asked every year. Previously, they have asked what is emotional intelligence and how it can be developed in people. Then, as a follow-up question, they asked how does it help an individual in taking ethical decisions? Help in taking ethical decisions. And this question is, in case of crisis of conscience, does emotional intelligence help to overcome the same? If you do not take ethical decision, if you value your own, if you compromise on your value, if you violate your own value system, then there will be crisis of conscience, right? So this question is kind of linked as to how emotional intelligence will help in taking ethical decisions, or how emotional intelligence can help in case of crisis of conscience. But the third aspect of this question is, how can it help without compromising the ethical or moral standard that you are likely to follow? For example, you are working in a PSC, okay? And there are people who are pressurizing you to take bribe. Because if you don't take bribe, they will become uncomfortable. They will become uncomfortable because then there's a risk that you may go and complain or do something. So everyone wants everyone to take bribe. That's the culture. So people are pressurizing you to take bribe. But you don't want to take bribe because you're an honest person. But because of that pressure coming into you, and if you are vulnerable to take bribe or do something wrong, then there will be crisis of conscience. Now, will emotional intelligence help you to resolve the situation without changing your stand? Meaning, will you be able to come out of the situation without changing the stand? That means you will not take bribe. So you have to manage your own emotion. Emotional intelligence is not only about your emotion, it is also about understanding emotion of others and then doing effective communication to manage the affairs, your interaction, your encounter with others. That's what is emotional intelligence. If you see the components of emotional intelligence, it is also having the component of effective communication for persuasion. So using emotional intelligence, you can actually manage your own emotion. Maybe your emotion of greed. Maybe suddenly you are tempting to take bribe. Maybe your emotion of fear. People are threatening you. There's a risk of your life or maybe job or something else. Your promotion may be stalled or something. So the emotion of fear has to be balanced, have to be managed. Your emotion of greed has to be managed. So you're managing your own emotion, but you're also understanding the point of view or the emotional state of others. And then you're effective communicating to them. So that may help in making clear that you are not going to take bribe and refraining them from pursuing you, pressurizing you to take the bribe. So that emotional intelligence, if you look at the component of emotional intelligence, it is designed in a way so that you do not only manage your own emotion, your state of affair, but also emotions and communicate effectively with others. So that will help you in not changing your ethical or moral stand if you use emotional intelligence. That's how you have to go about explaining it. Okay, so it's just the interconnectedness of three things, but very basic, and it is naturally actually connected already. If you look at question number 5, the question is based on refugees. Refugees should not be turned back to the country where they would face persecution or human rights violation. This is the principle of non-refoulement. If there's a threat to refugee in their homeland, then you do not send them back. Examine the statement with reference to ethical dimensions being violated by nations claiming to be democratic with open society. See, it is not just the importance of giving refuge to refugees. The question is about examining this importance of not sending them back and helping them and protecting them as a human right violation issue on the ground of empathy and compassion, on the ground of tolerance. That is there. But you also have to examine this in the context of nation claiming to be democratic with open society, meaning there's a gap in the projected value system in their claim and in their actual behavior. Although they are open society for themselves, but they are not opening up for refugees. So this is the ethical dimension, that there is inconsistency in the behavior and the projected value system. That is the core. That is the core theory of your paper. Why this inconsistency comes? When you do attitude value system, you have been taught that behavior largely emanates from it. But there could be inconsistency in the link between attitude value system and behavior. For what reason? You do this. And this is the direct application of that part that you study in theory as to why there is inconsistency in nations claiming to be democratic and open society, but they are not democratic enough and opening up enough for refugees. So the reasons that you study there, the factors that could be responsible for inconsistency, can be used in writing the answer to this question. So you have to read the question very carefully. You do not have to just start giving the importance of giving refuge to refugees. The question is actually something else. All right. See this question, should impartial and being non-partisan, it should be should impartiality and being non-partisan be considered as indispensable qualities to make a successful civil servant. This is a repeat question from 2016. Then they asked, should impartiality and non-partisanship be considered as foundational values? Here they are saying indispensable qualities. Same thing, differences in the choice of word. Should it be considered as foundational values in public service, especially in the present day of socio-political context? Illustrate your answer with examples. Discuss with illustrations. Almost the same thing. There's a little difference because they hear this discuss and here it's illustrate. But in the first part, they have asked why, so it will be a kind of discussion. So the question is the same with different choice of words. The thing is that impartiality and non-partisanship has been mentioned in your syllabus as foundational values of civil services. So it's obviously important. But the reason why they have been asking this so much, because in the present context, you see that there are cases of discrimination. There are cases of partiality and partisanship. So the question UPSC is touching on it again and again. This is a foundational value, and if this is gone, the foundation of civil services or bureaucracy will be shaken. So the thing is, the reason why it is very important, because the very reason sovereign authority has been given power is that the sovereign authority will work for the benefit of all. Then how it will work? It should have empathy, compassion. It should have objectivity. It should have dedication. It should have spirit of public service. But the very purpose of creating sovereign authority through social contract is to protect the rights of everyone. A citizen is a part of the state because there's a protection by the state. There is a promise that the state will protect the right of a citizen. If that promise is broken, the citizen will come out of the contract, will break the law. Citizens and the state can live in an organized setup, following the rules, following the laws, only when the contract is maintained from both sides, from the sovereign authority side and from the citizen side as well. This is a part of social contract. That government has to work for the rights of everyone. And that is why the most foundational and basic value of society in general is justice. Justice is very important, extremely important. If there is no justice, there is no sense of equality, then there will be confrontation. There will be sense of relative deprivation compared to other sections, other region, other community, other religion. And then there will be feeling of disenchantment. Then there will be conflict, there will be confrontation, there could be war. The peace will be broken, fraternity will be gone, social capital will erode, and ordering in society will not be possible. So Aristotle said that it is in justice that the ordering of society is centered. You need to have justice. And for justice, you have to ensure the rights of everyone. You do not have to be partial or non-partisan. Extremely important, indispensable qualities. That's why questions are asked, and this is how you have to answer. See the next question, an independent and empowered social audit mechanism. Independent and empowered is an absolute must in every sphere of public life, including judiciary, to ensure performance, accountability, and ethical conduct. People's participation in the process of governance is very important. You have in the syllabus many topics. UPSC has asked multiple times topics like RTI. You have in your syllabus citizen charter. You have in your syllabus auditing mechanism and social audit. The importance of this has been asked previously, although specifically a question on social audit has not been asked. This is a specific question on the accountability mechanism. UPSC has asked general question on good governance, ethical governance, and tools of transparency and tools of good governance. But this is specific tool of good governance or accountability has not been asked. But social audit is extremely important because it's a tool for participation of people. And Gandhiji has said that any government gains prestige through its ability to involve people in the process of governance. Because when people get involved, when you get involved in any process, then you start believing in that process. Then you start trusting that process. And trust is the core of any relation. The relation between government and citizen cannot survive without trust. When social audit mechanism is performed, then citizens do get into the process of governance very, very closely with some project and very strongly, because the decision of social audit has very high impact and very high value. So to involve the people in the process of governance is the mechanism through which the government gains prestige. The government has credibility. The government develops social capital. And then only good governance is possible. So it is an important thing, and it's part of the governance section of your syllabus. So it must have been prepared. Then there's a beautiful question, extremely good. Integrity is a value that empowers the human being. This is the crux actually of the entire GS paper. Just like we have seen, one of the very important things, that our life doesn't make sense without interconnectedness. That is the core learning from ethics. This is also a core learning from the entire philosophy of ethics, from your entire ethics paper. Integrity is a value that empowers human being. Empowers meaning you get into a position to lead a better life. That is what empowerment is. Empowerment means you have come to a position, better place to achieve something. And what is the goal, target of human being? To lead a better human life. To live a better life, that is the target, ultimate aim. Integrity is a value that empowers the human being. Ethics is not to be seen as a compromise over economic efficiency, as a compromise over growth, over career trajectory, over growth of a nation, over trade, over globalization. Ethics is not to be seen as a compromise. Ethics is to be seen as a tool of empowerment, because ethics makes life better. And UPSC has asked this many times. See this question of 2016. Explain how ethics contribute to social and human well-being. It does work. Ethics is a tool of empowerment. It makes life better. Previously, in 2014, UPSC has asked, what does ethics seek to promote in human life? Why is it all more important in public administration? So what does it seek to promote in human life? How does it make life better? How does ethics makes life better? How does it empower people? This you have to understand. And this is the core thing. This is one of the most foundational thing for syllabus. And integrity is one of the core value of ethics. One of the most important that ensures that other values get safeguarded. So it's quite similar thing if I say that ethics empowers human being, or integrity is a value that empowers human being. As to how ethics and integrity helps in empowering people to lead a better life. If you be honest, then trust in you increases. Your reputation increases. You'll have more leadership opportunity because people trust you more. So you can progress in your life more if you are ethical. If you have ethics, you'll have more interconnectedness with people. You'll have more empathy, compassion to help people. Your dignity will be boosted. Your chances of becoming a moral agent, as asked by Immanuel Kant, will increase. So your quality of life will increase. Companies which are ethical, who do corporate social responsibility, their reputation among customers is more. Their social capital is more. Their sale is more. So economically, financially, socially, politically, in all areas you can improve if you follow ethics. So ethics indeed is a tool of empowerment. That's how you have to explain this. And that is also what you have to learn in your life. Now we come to case studies. Okay, case study is a real game changer in your ethics paper, and I'll show you that, as you people rightly have already observed, that case study was easy this year. The reason being that they were first of all very straightforward, and second of all, these cases have been repeated. They have been asked already. UPSC is not coming up with new ethical theme for case studies. I'll quickly take you through 6 case studies, and then at the end, if you have some questions, I'll take your questions. But I'll show you a few things. I'll tell you as to how to go about writing the answer in much more detail in the videos that will be following up, and we'll be taking one question at a time so that we can do proper justice and explain the nuances of the questions. But here, the purpose is very different. The purpose is giving you a strategy. The purpose is showing you that your goal, your aim is not far off. It is achievable. Very, very achievable. See this case. Sunil is a young civil servant and has a reputation of his competence, integrity, dedication, and relentless pursuit of difficult and wondrous job. Now, he is having all the qualities, ideally, that will be expected in a young, brimming, innovative civil servant. So, because of his qualities, he has been given a job. But when he takes up the job, he sees that things are very murky and corruption is going on. And when he gets into the roots, he finds people who are involved in the act of corruption, then he starts doing something. When things started to be getting done, then people started to get anxious. It rattles them. So the mafia turned hostile and launched counter-offensive. The tribal musclemen and the mafia started threatening him with dire consequences. And his family, wife, and old mother are being stalked. And they are under virtual surveillance. And this is causing mental torture, agony, stress, pain. The matter assumed serious proportion when a Muslim came to the office and threatened that if he doesn't stop, then the consequence will be dire. He will meet the same fate as one of his predecessors who was killed 10 years back. So the problem for the civil servant seems to be enormous. It's a Himalayan problem for him to deal with, as he is still a young civil servant. So the thing is, what will you do? You see, this is a basic thing that UPSC asks. UPSC asks that you, being in extreme problematic situation, will you perform your duty or not? When there's a risk to your career, to your job, to your life, when there's suffering to your parents, to your mother, to your wife, and your friends and families, and you are having extreme mental agony, there's a psychological, emotional suffering, then what will you do? Even when there's a risk of life. That's the theme, okay? Rest of the thing are stories to build up the ethical dilemma. It's peripheral information. The core and core of it is, will you carry on the spirit of public service and do your job with integrity even when there's a threat to life? That's the core question. Okay? I'll tell you how to write answer to this. I'll tell you everything how to solve the case. But what I'm more interested in telling you right now is this is not a new thing. If you understand this, then you are better placed for the exam. Do not think that you'll go and brainstorm in the exam as to what to write in that case. Because if you do that, you are in a disadvantageous position. In the mains exam, time is of essence. Either you'll think or you'll write. If you think too much, you won't be able to complete the paper. So better strategy is to understand what are the themes and cases and prepare them beforehand. Get ready with your argument so that the core ethical scenario, the core ethical analysis will be the same. Depending upon the peripheral information, things will change. I'll just read out this case of 2014. Just bear with me and listen. You might get enlightened. You are a no-nonsense honest officer. You have been transferred to a remote district to a head of department that is to head a department that is notorious for its inefficiency and callousness. So you find actually what the problem is, and you find that there's a section of people who are indisciplined and they are disrupting the work of others as well. So you, being a disciplined officer, you ask the troublemakers, you warn them, but the warning doesn't work. Then you put out a show cause notice, and this rattles them. So they become retaliatory and they do planning and plotting to get rid of you. So they chose a woman among them, instigated her to file a complaint of sexual harassment against you. And the matter is also sent to media so that you are further embarrassed. So this is causing, again, problem for a man of integrity. You know, allegation of sexual harassment is just too much. It will cause you extreme mental problem. Extreme emotion might be gushed to you, and you might be distracted from your original job. So the question was asked that what will you do and how will you manage the scenario and what could be the course of action. This theme that when you are doing a job honestly and there are problems, you will be stonewalled and you'll be put to mental suffering. You, your dear ones, near ones, they will also be caught into the problem. Then what will you do? If there's a risk to your life, then what will you do? The same thing. UPSC has asked again and again. Now, if you have arguments in your hand that what will you do and what could be your course of action, then your answer will not much differ in the code. In this case, or the case previously we have seen that came this year. Similarly, the other cases that UPSC has asked. So you just have to know actually what to write for a case like this. It is not a big deal to deal with case studies because case studies, variation in that is very little. Okay, see this another case, the next case of the paper is that the case is like this. I'll just tell you the crux so that we can finish it off soon. You have the vice principal. You know, problem with vice principals that they have aspiration to become principal. That's the problem. So you are the vice principal and the principal is about to retire and there are rumors that you could be made principal. So naturally some kind of hope is rising in you. But there has been an annual examination and the flying squad came and they caught 2 students red-handed involved in using unfair means. But the thing is that one of the lad is the son of politician who helped you to get affiliation. And the other lad is of businessman who perhaps has given maximum fund as donation to run the college. So there's intense amount of pressure on you from school management to handle the case with a flying squad, to hush it up, to rub it under the carpet maybe. But the thing is that you are the man of integrity, you have value system. It also has been indicated to you that your chance of getting the promotion to become principal will depend upon your ability to deal with the flying squad, to hush up the case. But there are student union who are protesting at the gate and they want strict action against the students who have been, and the senior lecturers who have helped the student and the students who have used unfair means. This is a very rudimentary kind of case. The case is what I'll tell you. The case is that you have been positioned as a senior official. Okay? Now, on one side, what will be the scenario? You have to look at the welfare of your institution, whatever the institution can be. It could be a technical university, it could be a research body, it could be a private company, it could be a school or college, whatever. On one side, you have to take care of the interest, the reputation of your company, the growth, modernization fund for your company, for your institution. On the other side, or your career also. So welfare of your institution, your growth prospect, your career, your promotion on one side. On the other side, the dilemma will be that you have to safeguard your values. You have to safeguard yourself from having crisis of conscience. You have to fulfill your social responsibilities, moral responsibilities. You have to ensure work culture in your organization, ethics in your organization. You have to set the right precedents. So likewise, you'll have 2 ways to go. And this will be the dilemma. On one side, loyalty towards the organization. On the other side, your personal values of integrity, honesty, uprightness. This is what the case is about. As to what will you do? You have a promotion pending. Is that if you let the case come out, then the reputation of your college could get a beating. And then the funds can stop coming from that businessman. And the question on affiliation can also be raised. If there's a case and the politician gets rattled, then the affiliation can also be taken back. So implication will be very high if you just do not hush up the case, could be. And your own promotion. But on the other side, you have your integrity to be maintained, your own virtues to be maintained. You have to do justice to students who are not adopting unfair means. You have to ensure the future of nation. You have to bring out students with merit. You have to inculcate the culture of hard work among students. So that's on the other side. So what will you do? Okay. Now I'm going to just give me 5 minutes of time. If you have a few minutes, I'll just show you as to this is a repeat case. Case that has been repeated so many times previously. Just be with me. I'll run you through this case of 2013. In this case, you were heading a leading technical institute. So you have to take care of the interests of this technical institute. And there's a scenario where you are chairing a selection committee for a new professor. But few days before the selection, you get a call from the personal secretary of a senior government functionary. And this senior government functionary is responsible for releasing the fund for modernization of your institute. Now he wants his man to get the job of professor. And he assures you, his personal secretary, that if you do this favor, then the fund for modernization could be released very soon. This is a small, simple case because this was the beginning of the paper in 2013. UPSC later started to make better cases. But the scenario is the same. On one side, your welfare, your reputation of a technical institute, and modernization of your institute is there. On the other side is the work culture, is the process, integrity of the process of selection for professor. It's about the precedence of setting a right precedence in the selection process. It's about the organizational values, safeguarding it. It's quite the same thing. It's really quite the same thing. If I show you the other cases, you'll find more and more similarities. In this case, you were the CEO of a company that manufactures specialized electronic equipment. It's a specialized electronic equipment manufacturing company, so you're dependent upon government department for procurement. So you submitted the bid, but the officials or the officer who is responsible for bidding is asking for bribe. But getting the order is very important, because if you don't get the order, then the production of the company will decrease and a production line will have to be closed down. This will also mean that you have to do firing of people. So right to employment, right to life of some is at stake. If you give the bribe, you'll get the order, your company will do well, your employees will do well. If you do not give the bribe, you will not get the order, production line may close, you may have to fire people. What will you do? On one side, there is your organizational welfare. On the other side is your welfare of your personal ethics, your values. This is the case, just like the case which has been asked this year. On one side there, it was your college, you'll get the fund, you'll remain affiliated, and reputation of your college and your career as well. On the other side, there are other things. Things are the same. The core ethical things are not too many in life, I tell you. It will not be too many in your paper as well. See, discussion of 2017. Here, you were the manager of spare parts company A, and you had to negotiate a deal with another manager of another large manufacturing company B. And the deal is highly competitive. That means it's not very easy to get it, and there are maybe others in line to seal the deal with company B. Now, what happens is, on your way back, the manager of company B hit a motorcycle and the motorcyclist was injured badly. And you know that the manager was speeding up. He was very fast, and because of that, he broke the traffic norms, and because of that, he has hit the motorcyclist and he is injured very badly. Next day, when the investigating officer comes and asks you, the question is, what will you do? Will you give him honest account? If you give him honest account, then people will, then the manager of company B will go to jail, because there are strict laws pertaining to road accidents. And the deal that you were about to seal will obviously get into jeopardy. And hence, your career, your professional prospect will also be affected. So on one side, you are going to seal a deal for your company. So it's important for your institution. It's so important for your career as well. The case this year, the fund and affiliation important for your college. It's so important for your career as well, because you're a vice president you're a vice principal about to become principal. It's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. The core ethical scenario is, will you do an act of corruption to advance the interest of your company and your own professional interest? That's what the question is about. And very often, this theme is asked upon. So this case is not a surprise at all. Actually, none of the cases this year is actually a surprise. And what is even more, the cases are repeated. We repeated verbatim. I'll show you this case, the third case of the paper. It is repeated verbatim. See, an elevated corridor is being constructed to reduce traffic congestion in the capital of a particular state. Hear it very, very carefully. Elevated corridor, the purpose is to reduce traffic jam in a capital of a state. You are what? You are project manager. of this prestigious project and you're competent and experienced and so on and so forth. The deadline is to complete the project in next 2 years by 20 June 2021. Now, this is a very curious thing in the ethics paper you must have observed. This paper, this case perhaps was made in 2019 because the language is the deadline is to complete the project in next 2 years by 20 June 2021. So it must have been made 2 years back from here. But I don't know why they have put up this case in the paper for mains in January 2022. It's very curious. But anyhow, there's a deadline and the work has to go fast and the chief minister has to inaugurate it before the election of July 2021. So this is the case that there is a deadline and there's a pressure to complete the work on time. What happened was during surprise inspection, the inspecting team observed a minor crack. And this minor crack you brought to the notice of chief engineer. You are who? You are project manager. But the chief engineer overruled you. In the opinion of the chief engineer, that's not a major issue and the structural strength of the corridor will not depend upon those minor cracks. And it is also said that the project has to be completed on time and the chief minister the minister wants to ensure that the project is completed so that the chief minister inaugurates it before election. He ordered you to overlook the observation. But the thing is, and he also says that the further promotion to additional chief secretary depends upon how you cooperate, man. But you strongly felt that the minor crack in the pillar of the elevated corridor would adversely affect the health and life of the bridge, right? On one side, your career, your prospect of becoming additional chief engineer and the pressure from the superior and the pressure from the political masters and the deadline, everything. On the other side, you believe that it is not in the interest of the people. The life of the people is being posed to risk. And this will severely reduce the life of the bridge. So huge amount of money of public exchequer will be wasted if the bridge falls because of some minor cracks. But that is not being changed because of the pressure of time. All right, this is the case. All right. Now, see, this case has been asked previously in 2015. You're working as executive engineer. So you are again kind of project manager in the construction cell of a municipal corporation and are presently in charge of the construction of a flyover. There it was elevated corridor. Here it is flyover. Flyover is also elevated, but a kind of smaller project. But nevertheless, you are the project manager, kind of chief engineer in charge of a flyover. There are 2 junior engineers working under you and they have the responsibility of day-to-day inspection and updating on you. So while inspection, it was again the same thing. There was a report that through surprise inspection, it was found out that there has been serious deviation and lacuna in the construction, and there has been deviation from the planned specifications. But rectification of these lacuna at this stage would require a substantial amount of demolition and rework. There the pressure was of election, time. Here the pressure was of money. You have to do a lot of rework and the money will be wasted. So it will cause tangible loss to the contractor and will also delay completion. There's a lot of public pressure on the corporation to get this construction completed because of heavy traffic congestion. This heavy traffic congestion referenced in the previous case as well. And when you brought this matter to notice of chief engineer, he advised you that in his opinion, it is not very serious lapse and can be ignored. So the chief engineer overruled you again in this case as well. And he also said advice for further expediting the process of completion in time. However, you are convinced that this was a serious matter as you were convinced in the previous case. Now, I don't find any difference in this case and the previous case. Scenario by scenario, narration by narration, it's exactly the same. So you must observe the similarity and you must prepare as to what can be done. In this case, the case that UPSC has asked this year, they're asking what are the options available, okay? And in the case that UPSC has asked previously, UPSC itself gave you the options. From here, you can choose, these are the possible options. You follow the advice of chief engineer, or you make an exhaustive report of a situation, bringing all facts and analysis along with your point of view. So you make exhaustive report on it. Call for explanation from the junior engineers and issue orders to the contractors for necessary correction. You can go with this, or highlight the issue so that it reaches superiors above chief engineer. Or considering the rigid attitude of chief engineer, seek transfer from the project or report sick. These are the options UPSC gave you in this case. In this case that has been asked this year, they have been asking you the options. You can use the same options. Okay. Case is exactly the same. See, this case number 10, this is on COVID-19. Very interesting case. It's a long narration. Again, the date given in the case, surprisingly, is May 8, 2020. May 8, 2020. It's very surprising. And perhaps in that time, this case was made and perhaps someone picked that case. It was in the repository of UPSC and that this case was picked without reading into it. And this case was put in the paper. With this old date, the case shouldn't have been given, because this COVID-19 have been prevailing and went much beyond May 8, 2020. But ignoring this fact, the case talks about the frontline workers and how they have been put at risk to their life and how they were braving as frontline workers. Essentially, the case is asking you this: what are your criteria and justification for putting your clinical and non-clinical staff to attend to the patients, knowing fully well that it is highly infectious disease and resources and infrastructure are limited? When you know fully well that it is highly infectious disease, how can you ask your clinical and non-clinical staff to attend to patients? And on what criteria will you ask this? What is the justification? This is the first part of the case. The second part of the case of the question is, if yours is a private hospital, whether your justification and decision would remain the same as that of a public hospital. It essentially asks you, does the responsibility of a public servant, is that more than people who are in the private service providers? Responsibility of a public servant is more. And UPSC has asked this umpteen number of times. See, this question of 2014, what does ethics seeks to promote in human life? Okay. Why is it all more important in public administration? Ethics is much more important in public administration because public administration administers. And administer has been derived from the word administar, the Greek word, which means to serve. Administration exists to serve. Private companies may not exist to serve people. They may exist for profitability, income. But administration exists to serve. So they have to serve, because otherwise the whole purpose of their existence will be defeated. It is the part of social contract that the sovereign authority, the governance structure, the administrative machinery, everything will work to bring justice in society, to ensure rights of people. That is why it is more important in public administration to have ethics. This UPSC has asked in 2014. In 2019, UPSC has asked, non-performance of duty by a public servant is a form of corruption. Non-performance of duty by a public servant is a form of corruption. So it's essential that the public servants brave the emotion of fear, become the frontline worker, and help others. It's very important. Otherwise, the entire structure of an organized order society will break. If administration fails to operate, then the structure of society will break. You must have heard the quotation, if our civilization fails, then the most important reason for that will be the breakdown of administration. Working of administration efficiently is important for holding up for survival of entire civilization. So responsibility of public servant is more, this you know, and UPSC has asked this in several different forms. UPSC also asked in 2019 itself, what do you understand with the term public servant? Reflect on the expected role of public servant. Because expectation from public servant is more, right? Now come to this part. If yours is a private hospital, whether your justification and decision would remain the same as that of a public hospital. During time of COVID, you know that many private hospitals were shut down and government could not force them to be open. But public hospitals have to be open. What will happen if public hospitals also get shut down? Do you know what will happen? There will be complete breakdown of trust, social capital. If government goes away from that situation, leaving people into the lurches during the time of pandemic, public hospitals cannot remain closed. It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of it's the matter of honoring social contract. So your decision will obviously change for the reason that we have discussed. All right. But this is an important theme of special responsibility of public servants that have been asked previously many times, which you have to prepare. This time around, it has been put the same idea in the form of case study. Okay, now let's look at the second last case and then we'll wrap it up. This is a case, the second last case is on. There is not much of a clear dilemma in the second last case. Very clear dilemma is not there. If you have read the case, I'll tell you the case is about a reputed food product company. Okay, now initially the company started exporting the food product, but there was a promise that domestically also the same kind of product will be made and sold. So when it got the necessary approval from the competent authority domestically, then domestically also the company started to make this product and start selling. So the same thing, or it was projected that the same thing will be sold, was being sold in Indian market as well. So, and hence the company was doing very well and it can become very profitable and it can earn substantial profit both domestically and internationally. However, the random sample test conducted by inspection team found that the product being sold domestically is in variance with the approval obtained. The approval obtained was on the standard of product that was being exported. On that standard, approval was given. But the product being sold domestically is in variance with the approval obtained. And it was also seen that the company was selling the rejected export products in the domestic market. But it is not very clear if the rejected export products were being sold at lower prices or at the same price. It is a general thing that if from one market the product gets rejected, you go to the other market with reduced price. Even if you go to a fruit seller, he will have categorized apples into various categories. Some he will be selling 400 rupees per kg, some 250, 200, 220, 160. You will also be selling some apples of rupees 80 per kg. So segregation of products based upon standards and selling them at lower price is not an unethical practice. The case is just saying that they are selling the rejected export products in the domestic market. But if they are selling it at a lower price, then that's not a problem. But if they're selling it at the same price, then that's a problem. But that thing has not been made clear in the case. But one thing has been made clear, that domestically they are selling food products which are in variance with the approval obtained. So this is blatantly illegal. Okay, so it's a case of corporate ethics. There are various dimensions in the case. It's a matter of trust. First, the company started to perform very well, and it was the exporter, and the quality of food product was good. So trust was developed. Based on that trust, the domestic market picked up, but you broke the trust. Now you're selling suboptimal level food product. So it's a matter seriously of corporate ethics, and there are different dimensions in this that you can think of. And it's an easy, straightforward case without much of a huss-fuss. Now this case is a pretty long one, pretty long case, but the case is UPSC has been belaboring over the same thing. They have said the same thing in 10 sentences. The problem that the Pawan is having. This case is that the Pawan has been transferred to a new place, and in a new place, the boss seems to be a little khadus kind of. And he's insulting him, and he's pointing out his teeny-bitty mistakes, and he's not appreciating, and he's publicly disgracing him. He's not motivating or encouraging. He's finding his fault from him every time. And when Pawan goes and gives some suggestion, blatantly, outrightly, that suggestion is rejected. So Pawan started feeling bad. He started feeling demotivated. He started feeling insulted. And then the quality of life of Pawan starts deteriorating. He has mental agony, and then the problem from public sphere started going to the personal sphere. And that problem in personal sphere resulting in his irritation, his tantrum, his anger towards wife, who was used to be very supportive, Pawan has been destroyed because of bad work culture, bad behavior of boss. Professionally, and his private relations also has been destroyed. That's the crux of the case. So they are asking what are the dilemmas and the other things they're asking. This case is basically having various aspects. One of the aspect is the work culture that's prevailing in the organization. The other aspect is the leadership quality of the boss, the managerial skill of the boss. There are other aspects as well. There's the aspect of emotional intelligence. If problems are at workplace, you should not bring it home. You shouldn't have deteriorated your relation with your wife. You should have managed it very well. There are ways and means for grievance redressal. There are innovative ways to come out of ethical dilemmas. There are innovative ways to come out of problems. You should have adopted that. Initially, we saw a quotation. You cannot come to peace with world unless and until you have peace within. So unless you have peace within, how will you manage with your boss? How will you manage the bad work culture at work? You have to be at peace within. You have to overcome the negative emotion of anger, the negative emotion of fear. Right? So that's the crux of the case, and we will do it, the detailed answer of it, very shortly in the videos that will be released subsequent to this discussion. This was the idea. See, the purpose of this session was to tell you that the target is not far away. And GS paper 4, the nature of this is such that it is easily handleable, very easily. You can do it in a very short span of time, and you can do it very effectively because you do not have to do huge amount of things. The coverage is less. Syllabus is defined. Themes are repeated. Topics are repeated in the form that the questions are same, but they're asked in different manners. Sometimes they're asked directly, sometimes they're asked in the form of quote, sometimes two topics are linked and they have been asked, but the common themes of the ethics paper, they are the same. If you cling on them and develop good content and practice on those themes, then you will perform par excellent in this paper. Overall, in the long and short of it is this: you can prepare for this paper in advance. Well, you have to prepare for every paper in advance, but many times when you go for the paper, you have to think there. You have to think there to formulate, to understand question, to generate content. But here, everything can be ready in your hand. You have to go and place that on the examination paper. That's the advantage you have with this paper. If you identify it, prepare for it, you'll have huge advantage over others. So I submit my case here. Whatever I wanted to tell you regarding strategy and understanding of the paper that I have done. Now there remains to be seen as to how we will go about writing answers and the details, the nuances of structuring, presentation, content, those aspects of answer writing also we'll discuss. That's a different ball game, and that's ultimately what you have to learn rather than understanding the trend and the sources areas as to how to prepare. Answers have to be very good. Even if you understand question can seem sometimes very easy, but you may not write very marks fetching answer for that. Answer writing skill is a different thing, and that also will learn through answers that will subsequently be released. Science and technology. For science and technology, you have to go through the syllabus. Your mains paper has syllabus of science, like their topics are mentioned, like biotechnology, nanotechnology, robotics. Those topics have to be covered for both prelims and mains. And whatever is coming in newspaper, if you look from analyzing the previous year's question paper, UPSC focuses on certain things. Emerging technologies, UPSC loves to ask. UPSC has asked question on 3D technology in 2018. UPSC also has asked question on artificial intelligence in 2020, what artificial intelligence can do. So whatever is the emerging technology, you have to do it. You have to do it, the topics mentioned in the syllabus of mains exam. Of course, you can use quotations. You can use quotations. In fact, I have used quotations to tell you something. The service to man is service to God. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. You can use quotation for justification of your stand. Absolutely. Not only you can use, You must use. If you have any other question from any GS papers, the concerned teacher will come up and answer it. You can, it is open not only for GS4, you can ask questions from anywhere to any of the concerned mentor. In the first part and the second part of, I told you there itself that there is overlapping in 1A and 1B. So definitely you can repeat. There's no problem. Why will you not repeat? The first part is saying 5 values, ethical traits for performance evaluation. And second part is asking you 10 important values. So the one that you will use in performance evaluation, are they not important? They are important, right? But then in the second part, they're just asking you to list it down. And majority of the more weightage is given to the second part of the question on attitude formation. So you can repeat, there is absolutely no problem. Personal examples you can give in ethics. Absolutely. It is rather also encouraged to give personal examples. UPSC sometimes do ask with the language, what has been your experience, or when you have experienced situation like this, illustrate from your real life example. UPSC has used language like this, and it is appreciated if you use personal examples. But do not use your personal example in every answer. Question that has personal touch, the question that asks you in first person, what will you do? There you can use, or rather it is encouraged that you use personal examples. The blue LED was kind of out of the blue, but I told you, if you know UPSC very well, if you know the man, you will know what he's going to ask. So it was not a surprise as such, blue LED. I showed you the slide. The exact language I have used, that the Nobel Prize in physics in 2014 was given for this purpose. The exact language UPSC has used. LED, if you have the sense, if you have developed this aptitude as to where UPSC is focusing, it's quite easy to predict as to from where the question will come. It might not have been covered, blue LED, because this is of 2014, wasn't of current affair. So it might not have been covered, but we did cover in our Focus magazine. In our Focus magazine, you'll find the reference to blue LED. And in the QIP classes, we did elaborately cover the blue LED topic.
Faizan sir, can you please stop screen share so that we can have a better grid value?
Yes, sir.
And it is a request for everyone. You can ask your question by raising your hands. So in the participant, you can go and raise your hands, and then Faizan sir is available, Baswa sir is available, Vaibhav sir is available. So all these people are available. They can answer your question. Please go ahead and raise your answers, raise your hands, and then interact with the teacher directly. So that's a good way.
Good evening, sir. My question is for Vaibhav, sir. Sir, I just wanted to know that if I follow just the mains compass for mains answer writing for particularly for environment and ecology, would that be suffice, or do I have to refer any other sources too?
Yeah. So Abhishek, you have been a very regular and ardent follower of me and Baswa sir were discussing VCU in every class. And so while going through the GSI QIP classes for last 2 to 3 months, you must have seen that whatever topic we have covered, 3 topic in my case has been asked in this year mains itself. Right?
Exactly, sir.
So that should give you a confidence that mains compass, if it is exhaustive source for environment and economy, so it will be for other subjects as well. So it's just not for environment. Environment has a, you can say environment is a very limited, has a very limited coverage. Sometimes the question can be very unpredictable, but they are very less in number. Most of the questions can be easily predicted. And so mains compass covers all the dimensions, whatever dimensions are required to answer that question in a manner which can fetch you the maximum marks. That coverage is done in the mains compass. But you should not wait for the mains compass, but you should prepare those topics as and when they are taught to you in the GSI QIP current affairs class. You should prepare them every month from Focus magazine and not wait until the compass is released, because compass is released before the mains examination, right? So you should keep on building up the concepts, taking the dimensions into your notes, and then when the main compass come, it is like a revision.
Got
Right.
it, sir.
Yeah, so just
Also, one more thing to ask, like for example, while you were discussing GS paper 3, particularly environment section, you
Yeah.
said that there are many themes that are being repeated in the
Mhm.
past years,
Yeah.
and now also. So, should I do a practice of noting down those themes and the relevant question? What sort of questions are being
Yeah.
asked by UPSC?
Yeah, so basically, whenever we take up a topic in the QIP classes, we make sure that whatever questions have been asked in the past from that particular theme, we show them to you that this question has been asked. So if we take a topic, the question has already been asked, we display that question in front of you, right? You have seen that. At this point of time, if you are appearing in this particular prelims, I don't think that would be a good idea to do this level of research on mains, because just 4.5 months from now, you have prelims.
Exactly, sir.
Right. So when you will come for our mains revision classes, we do that exercise in the mains revision classes anyways. So
Definitely, sir.
yeah, so if you are planning to appear to take 2022 prelims examination, I don't think you should start with this exercise of identifying the previous year questions right now, when it is already
Surely,
20th
sir.
of January, right?
Got it, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Good evening, sir. My question is to Faizan, sir, that while attempting case studies, do we have to choose a solution which is win-win for both the parties, or we have to go with that it benefits maximum people and there might be some loss for small amount of people?
No, it depends upon the situation. Sometimes the situation will be win-win. Using innovation, you can come with a situation that, for example, sometime a flyover has to pass by. Now, flyovers are important infrastructures. So you have to construct it. But beneath flyovers, there could be some very fertile agricultural land. Now, there is a dilemma whether to carry on the project or not. The win-win situation could be if there is a possibility to change the route of flyover. That is a win-win. But every time win-win will not be possible. So you go
Sir,
for maximum number of people, that may be possible. For example, mining. Mining does displace some people, but mining is important for the nation, for national development. You need energy security, you need rural electrification, you need rural development. So it's an important, economically, socially important project. So it benefits more number of people, so you still go for it, but you make sure that people who are displaced, they have their rights restored and they are compensated accordingly. This is another thing. But sometimes you go with the last person in the society. For example, if there is an issue of domestic violence, for example, there's an issue of gender issues or tribal rights sometimes for that matter, or elderly issues, then you would not look at the maximum benefit for maximum number of people. You might take a stand when you have to support the last person in society to ensure that the nature of Indian state is that of a welfare state, to ensure the principle of Antyodaya of Mahatma Gandhi, to ensure the principle of trusteeship of Mahatma Gandhi. It depends upon the situation exactly. It is not a universal principle that you can apply in different cases. And in the same case, different people can take different stand. Sometimes you can say that mining should be done. Sometimes some people can say mining should not be done. Depends upon what ethical principle you're adopting and what justification you're giving for that. So there cannot be a unique stand that you can take in every case. It will be on case-to-case basis.
So very well said, but in the case study regarding that we are the vice principal of a institution and that 2 students got caught. So my point would be that to make a win-win situation, I would diplomatically deal with both the parties. That is, I will also take lenient, not a strict, but good enough action, and also protect the institutions.
Protect institutions' reputation and your career.
Yeah.
Okay, but I wouldn't say that you should do it.
So what would be the
Einstein
ideal
said that
solution?
relativity exists in physics. It does not exist in ethics. Certain principles cannot be violated. Integrity cannot be violated. You have to be upright. If there has been unfair means and you are going to head the institution, then you cannot support it. You have to be very upright about it, whether you get the promotion or you do not get the promotion. You have to be upright, extremely upright. You do not have to look for a backdoor solution. You do not have to show that street smartness here. That will not be appreciated, trust me. That is not diplomatic. You have questions coming in the mains exam in ethics that integrity means complete unwillingness to compromise on your values, justify. That's what UPSC is saying, complete unwillingness to compromise on your value. And certain values are extremely important, they are universal. So if you try to run a fast and loose one in this, and you say that I'll save my career and institution reputation and I'll go ahead by being loose, that is not an appreciable stand in my view. That is incorrect. You shouldn't go with that as stand, because it is said that corruption is addictive. Corruption is like a small hole in the sink in a large ship that eventually will wreak havoc and break the ship apart. You start with slow, small corruption, but gradually it deteriorates the work culture, and the whole work culture, the whole environment, the whole miasma gets vitiated. It's just a matter of time. And you being the head of institution, if you're doing this, then what about the subordinates and other professors and lecturers? They will be very blatant about it. And in a matter of time, your institution will become corrupt, completely corrupt. So you're not saving your institution, actually you're destroying it. That is the stand and the vision you should have of ethics. I told you, ethics is not a compromise. Ethics empower people in long run. So the stand that you are taking that will have a win-win situation is actually going to be very, very destructive in a long run. And I would suggest that don't think like that. Don't think like that. Don't think diplomatic. Have diplomacy for international relation when you become a diplomat. Here, don't show diplomacy. That will not be appreciated. Show uprightness.
Good evening, everyone. My question is to Basava, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, initially in the economic survey last year, and as your class also went like that, it was stated that India had an V-shaped recovery.
Okay.
And the question also was a little bit had a similar resemblance.
Yeah.
But after some time in the Rouse DLS and also from the news headlines, we came to know that there are certain prime economists of our country who state that there has also been an instance of K-shaped recovery. Yeah. So if the question is of V-shaped recovery, and maybe we have an approach that no, it is a K-shaped recovery. Mm-hmm. So how should be our answer approaching? Should we follow the government's perspective, the economic survey, or the prime economist of our country? And if we have to answer that diplomatically, then how diplomatic should we?
Yeah, see, first and foremost, this question about K-shaped, this V-shaped economic recovery was asked predominantly because last financial year, the GDP growth rate was minus 7.5%. And then immediately in the first quarter of this financial year, the GDP had increased to 20% GDP growth rate. So most of the economists, including the government, they said that it's a V-shaped economic recovery. And the same was highlighted in the economic survey as well. But later on, we got to know that this kind of economic recovery is that was only the short run as such. It's more of a K-shaped economic recovery because only some sectors as such have been able to have a higher growth rate. But if you look at the contact sensitive sectors, they were not able to come out of the demand and investment has so far not increased. So here, as far as this question is concerned, first and foremost, you have to highlight as to what extent India has been able to have a V-shaped economic recovery. For this, you can give points such as that demand, consumption expenditure has picked up, investment expenditure has picked up. Probably you can highlight the fact that the government's expenditure as such, which had declined in the recent times, it has picked up in the previous financial year. So because of which, slowly the animal spirits are coming back into the Indian economy, and slowly the Indian economy is picking up. But you have to come up with the counter arguments also, because if you look at the first quarter of the present financial year, we registered 20% growth rate, and 20% growth rate is predominantly because of the base effect. I hope you understand the base effect, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's predominantly because of the base effect that the GDP had shown a much higher growth rate. So we cannot say as such that Indian economy is having a V-shaped economic recovery. Some sectors have been able to come out of the recession, but even today, some sectors are still languishing. They're not been able to come out of the slowdown. So it's more of a K-shaped economic recovery. Apart from that, we must also understand that COVID-19 pandemic has as such accentuated the economic slowdown. We were facing the economic slowdown much before the COVID-19 pandemic also. I hope you must be knowing about this,
Yes, sir.
right? So what COVID has done is it has further accentuated the economic slowdown. So when we are saying that it's a V-shaped economic recovery, does it really mean that we'll go back to the higher GDP growth rate of say 2015-16? I don't think so right now, because as highlighted by one of the previous economic survey, what we are facing right now is drag of the financial sector. The financial health of the banks as such is extremely poor, as you know, right? That is why the investment has got declined, and because of decline in investment, this has had a repercussions on the consumption. So it's a kind of a vicious cycle which Indian economy has got itself into. So we cannot completely say that Indian economy is having a V-shaped economic recovery right now. Probably some sectors have come out, but there are some sectors we are still facing this recession. So as far as this question is concerned, I don't think that you have to completely agree with what the government has said.
Yes.
So you have to go with your own conviction here. So here, if you have your own conviction and if you're able to prove your point, I guess that should be more than sufficient.
Okay, sir. So in other such diplomatic questions, like for example, yesterday Vaibhav sir was discussing about Western Ghats and that Kasturirangan committee. So it was also a Gadgil committee and it had recommended 100%, and then Kasturirangan gave it for 37%, and the government went for 37%. So in those scenarios, when the questions come for landslides, so should we also focus on that Gadgil committee report where government is not approaching to such report? It is focusing on that 37%. So should we be diplomatic and turn in enough from inside that while writing, we also go with that Gadgil committee report?
I think Vaibhav sir is the best person.
Yeah, Amrit, so yesterday when we talked about Gadgil and Kasturirangan in the conclusion of that answer, hello Amrit, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, the central government accepted it, but it was put on hold because of the opposition from all the state governments, which actually have the Western Ghat area, right?
Yes.
So, UPSC is a central commission. So, in principle, the central government has always agreed to not just the Gadgil, it agreed to Gadgil, which was 100%, which was about 100% he has said, but it has definitely agreed to Kasturirangan, and that is what the opposition which has been put forward by the state government is that how can you agree to something on which we are in opposition, right? So if you write something which is in alignment with the central government, that is not a problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Next is Uma HK. Please unmute yourself.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
My question is to Faizan sir regarding ethics paper. Sir, when we are quoting certain examples and case studies where are particular questions, can we quote from personal experience?
You can quote from your personal experience, it's not a problem, but you do not have to be very abstract. For example, you don't have to say that I went to place X and I went Mr. B and so such a thing happened.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything if you give example like that.
Okay.
In case studies, mostly in case study, what will happen? You have to do ethical analysis. You have to highlight ethical issues, and then you have to take your stand.
Okay.
Once you have taken your stand, you have to give justification.
Yeah.
And there you can give examples, you can give philosophies, you can give quotations, you can give ethical principles, you can give theory from your paper.
Okay.
In that reference, you can also give your personal experience. It's not a problem.
Okay.
But that personal experience should not be a very abstract experience. It should be something realistic to some event in the past. Maybe there was some earthquake and you were there.
Yeah.
And in that reference, you are giving some example, then that will count.
Okay.
But if you're giving an abstract example, like you had a friend and you had this kind of relation and he did something and you guided him like that, it doesn't mean anything. It sounds like a made up example. So abstract examples don't give, but if you have really a realistic personal experience, you had some event of air crash and you were there and how you help people and people know about that air crash or something like that. Something concrete with concrete information. If you have personal example, you should give. But you shouldn't just give examples that sounds very made up, very abstract.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Baswa, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I'm a student of Quality Improvement Program, and in the
Okay.
first class, you said like if we follow the current affairs of the QIP, we need not be daily with the DNS program. Like as you said, like you're going to provide the links in the videos.
Yeah.
But coming to the class lecture notes of environment and ethics, I couldn't find any link for the DNS videos. Like my doubt is like whether like I should just stick on with the current affairs classes or like to daily watch the DNS also.
See, I had said, as far as my current affairs classes was concerned, I had clearly said it from the perspective of Indian economy. See, what happens is, in case of Indian economy, is the source is quite wide, right?
Yes,
So, in the DNS, we normally cover the articles only from the perspective of the Hindu newspaper. But as far as the source for the Indian economy is concerned, in the current affairs classes, which I conduct, I take the articles from different sources such as Business Line, Mint, Business Standard, and so on. So what I said was, whatever current affairs classes which I'm conducting, I'll be covering from the other sources except Hindu. As far as the Hindu related articles, which you should not miss out, for that I said I will be giving you the YouTube playlist, which I've
Yes,
been
sir.
doing also, right?
So like I mean like so it is mandated. I mean it is like advisable to watch the DNS also every day along with the QIP current
I
affairs
think it's
classes.
yeah.
Okay.
You got to understand as to how to approach the GS paper 3, right? So in GS paper 3, we started with the discussion of Indian economy. So we discussed as to how to approach the mains for the next year by looking into the paper of this year. Then we discussed the environment part. Then Faizan sir discussed about the ethics and science and technology, and Mangal sir discussed about the internal security. I hope this particular class was fruitful enough. You got to understand the approach to the paper. And once again, I want to reiterate this whole thing once again. Don't go out for looking for different sources. We have compiled the mains compass by taking out source from different sources. So this alone, this mains compass itself should be a one-stop solution for your preparation. Okay. So whenever you're writing the UPSC, the test series as part of our Rao's IS test series, mains test series, you just have to simply revise the mains compass which we have given to you. So that alone should be sufficient. And do not have this apprehension as to whether if I read only this, would it be sufficient or not. So as I said, we'll be coming out with the separate videos. So in these separate videos, we'll tell you as to how our sources alone was sufficient enough to answer most of the questions. So do not have this kind of apprehension on the sources. I hope you are clear. Okay. So it is really nice taking your class. Thank you so much. You have been very patient listeners. You have been sitting for such a long time. Okay. That is what is the dedication and patience that you need for clearing the UPSC examination. Thank you once again. Thank you so much.